So to give a brief background, sorry, let me just re-expand my Teams window. There we go. I'm going to demo a couple, and then Maggie, who is one of our 2023 interns, is going to also demo one that she just did. So for my two use cases, I'm looking at a couple of dashboards that we have published. We have an open data page for our police department. It's continually in development, but we do have a few different dashboards on there. One of them we have is of traffic stops in Brooklyn Park since 2017. They have been tracking traffic stop data, and that includes recording it's called observed race and sex. So they're not actually going up to the person and being like, hey, are you black? Like, it's whatever the officer sees. So it's not perfect, but we have data that's basically being reported every month for that. And then similar for our crime statistics dashboard. Crime statistics, actually, I think both of them, we are uploading the data to ArcGIS Online because we found that trying to run that off of a feature layer that's referencing our enterprise geodatabase just was not performant enough when you're dealing with this many records. So as part of that, we have a monthly process where we need to upload the data. We're really sticklers at Brooklyn Park about taking on any more manual work, just because that restricts us from getting to do new stuff. So we wanted to build something that our crime analyst, who has very limited experience in GIS, could still use to actually take over the responsibility of updating this data and also potentially learn a little bit of GIS along the way. So to do that, we're using something called tasks in ArcGIS Pro. If this existed in ArcMap as something similar, I never really used it before. Obviously, there's Model Builder, there's script tools using Python, but the thing that I think is a little different about tasks is it's more like a guided, it's more like, it feels more like a wizard process of going through steps, but you can have steps that are automated. You can control how exactly people are interacting with them. And so just to show what that looks like, I'll show the actual tasks that we have to update these two dashboards. So I'll do the crime updater first, just because it's more direct. Under the view menu, this is just one of the windows that you can open, is called tasks. You can have multiple tasks in a project. And I'm going to run it first, and then I'll actually open it up and show what's happening. But this one's only 2 steps. The first step is going to use the Make Feature Layer tool, and it's already pre-filled out to some extent. So it has the our enterprise crimes layer in here. It has the output layer name, and then there's just instructions here to say you need to complete the query. So in this case, let's say that it's, the next time that this is run will be August 1st. So our crime analyst would come in here and type in that date to basically say, give me everything prior to that, because for the crime statistics, we upload a month's worth of data at a time, because since you can look at multiple years, we're trying to keep the time frames from year to year equivalent, so you don't have like all of July from 2022, but only part of July from 2023. But then I can click run. That will go ahead and create the feature layer for me, and then it's going to run a command, which is the overwrite web layer command, that will open up, once it runs here, it'll open up the overwrite web layer command, and then our crime analyst just has to select the crimes layer, click OK. That'll open up the sharing. It's going to give the prompt saying, hey, you're overwriting the web layer, because we're uploading the new data. Instead of like just appending the new data, we're doing a complete refresh of the data, just because this is coming out of our police's record management systems, and information on past crimes may be edited periodically. So instead of having something super advanced to be like, just give me the changed records or anything like that, we just do a fresh cut of the data. But then our crime analyst is able to hit publish, and that'll upload the new data to ArcGIS Online, and that'll be all done. So to show what that looks like, if I right click on the task, I can go ahead and edit it in the designer. So you can give it a name, you can have a description of it, and then if I start opening this up, you can see the individual steps. One thing that's really nice is you can customize the name, you can have a tooltip, you can fill out some instructions, which I think is really nice. Again, these are kind of like guided workflows. And then there's different ways that you can have the step run. I still get confused between auto run and auto proceed. But really what that's saying is, do you want the user to run the step, or do you want it to be an automated step? Do you want to hide it so they never even see it happen? Do you want it to be an optional step so that they can skip it? Maggie will, I believe, show an example of an optional step in her demo. But then under here is, what exactly do you want to do? And there's different options. There's you can record. So if you want, I think that's how I did the overwrite web layers. It's similar to if you've ever done like record a macro in Excel. You can kind of just do what you want it to do, and it'll record that step. But otherwise, in here, I can say I want to edit. This is what I'm running is the make feature layer tool. I'm basically able to kind of fill out what I want the inputs to be for this tool. And then when I'm done with that, I can click done. If I was creating a new step right here, this is where under actions, it would say, well, what exactly do you want to do? You can run geoprocessing tools. You can run specific commands. So like similar to like if you're customizing a toolbar, you have access to not just GP tools, but all different kinds of commands that you can run. You can control on your map which layers are visible. You can change selectability. So in this case, in the overwrite web layer, I have it set to turn the crimes layer on so they can visually see it. And then the overwrite web layer step is just going to run the overwrite. All it does is it runs the overwrite web layer command. And the reason that it works is because ArcGIS Pro just inherently knows when this command is run it against the selected layer. And since this layer was just created, it's selected in the table of contents. And so by having that task, then our crime analyst can just run this. When she's done, she can just close the project. She doesn't need to save anything because the whole point of this is to just upload the data to ArcGIS Online. There's nothing being written to file. So now let's look at our traffic stops updater. So again, we've got our hosted feature layer added to Pro, which helps really nicely because in this case, so the crime data, we do a full refresh. The traffic stops, we're just appending the data because traffic stop information doesn't really ever get, like once it's been logged, it doesn't really change. So in this case, we're just going to upload the next month's worth of data. So I'll go ahead and run this one. Again, you can have notes. In this case, it's got a note just letting the analyst know before she runs it to make sure that she's done a few things to the spreadsheet. We could, of course, do this in GIS too. There's always 1,000 ways to do things. In this case, because the data is starting as an export from their records management system, it's just reminding her to make sure that this is only events that happened in Brooklyn Park, making sure to go to what exactly the traffic related offense was and make sure it's only traffic stops. And then for the latitude and longitude, make sure that those are in number format so that when we use our make XY, that works. So provided that works, it asks you to provide an Excel file to do Excel to table. And if we browse to that, the most recent data I have is from February because that was the last time I had to run it. Since then, our crime analyst has been doing it, which is awesome. You have to specify the sheet. We could have that preloaded, but we don't necessarily know if it's always going to be called table 1. So we just the analyst does have to do that. And then one little extra bonus tip: if you've never used the memory workspace before in ArcGIS Pro, it was called in memory in ArcMap. That allows you to write your outputs to your computer's RAM. So instead of having to write something to a file geodatabase, this just gets stored in the memory that the Pro executable is being run on. And then basically when you close your Pro project, it deletes everything that was stored in memory. So it's a really, really nice place to store intermediate data because you're literally not writing anything to file. You're just temporarily writing it. there is documentation on ArcGIS Pro about writing geoprocessing output to memory. It's one of our favorite tricks for all of our Python scripts and stuff like that. Because if you run that in a Python script, you don't have to like clean up afterward. Like basically once that Python executable is done, everything that was written to memory gets purged. So super, super fun. In this case, we're doing it because we're going to create a new table, but we don't need that. So I'll go ahead and click run. This is going to bring the table in. If I look at my source here, you can see that this is listed as the in-memory workspace here. So that's where that's being stored. I'll specify my latitude and longitude. We have the coordinate system pre-populated. We have the output feature class, again, specified in there. And then what's unique about this one is it's now going to run several automated steps. It's going to further massage the data to create a year field, a month field, and it's just using the spreadsheet has a date field. So we can just use a little bit of, here we go, our log time. We can use Python to extract the year and the month and plug that in so that, again, this is being run by somebody who doesn't use GIS that much. So now if I were to open up this new data, along with all of the information that just came from the spreadsheet, we now have these two additional fields that the task calculated for the year and the month, and we want the month to be the actual, like the three-letter abbreviation of the month. And then here's an append tool, and it's basically already got everything mapped to make sure all these fields. So you can see that not all the fields are the exact same name. So we've pre-mapped that so that when the analyst clicks append, they don't have to worry about any of that. So let's take a look at this task under the hood. So here's our import new data table. You could obviously make XY directly from an Excel spreadsheet. We like to bring the data into a feature table just because it assigns an object ID, which just generally makes it more ArcGIS friendly. And honestly, I've just been bitten in the butt enough times by geoprocessing tools running against Excel files that I just like to, as the first step, be like, nah, let's make this an actual feature table. And that way I can identify, like, if a text field got converted to a blob, like I can see that before we keep going. We're going to make our XY layer. Again, here you can see we've got this. This is something I could fix where really I think that these are the standard names now. So I could come in here and say, actually, you know what, from now on, pre-populate with these fields so they don't have to click anything. And I could click done. And now my task is updated. Add year and month. So here's where now we're using this automatic step. So we could also make it hidden so the user wouldn't even see it. We don't have it hidden. Instead, we have just the instructions letting them know kind of the progress. This is similar to like if you write a Python script and you want to have like a print statement or something like that. It just kind of lets you know the progress where the task is at. So it just lets them know what it's doing. So this is just running the add fields tool, and it's adding the two fields for us. So it's adding an integer field for the year, and it's adding the month field. And then calculate field for the year. So this again is where we can come in and we can use, a little bit more intermediate Python to say log time.year. This is not something a lot of our GIS users would necessarily know how to do these kinds of field calculations using Python functions. So we can do that. And then similar for our month field, we can use the string from time and then use the format that will basically give us the first three characters of the month spelled out. And again, that's just coming from the log time field. So Python's great about understanding date. So it can calculate that for us. And then there were a couple other fields that got recalculated. Basically, like the way the data is exported versus how it's displayed in the dashboard, we have some replace statements that run to say if in the record management system it says white Hispanic, we're going to call that Hispanic. White non-Hispanic, we're going to call that white, kind of stuff. So basically just like replacing strings. Same with our juvenile field. If it's reported as no, we want that to say adult, versus if it's yes, we want that to say juvenile. And that's if you look at the traffic stops. Here's where we can see like age of driver. Instead of this saying yes and no, now it'll say adult and juvenile. So we don't have to have a note here that's like no means this and yes means that. We can just kind of calculate the data there for us. There's upload the new data and then deleting the temp data, which again, even though those are in memory, this step's not really necessary, but we have it anyway. It'll go ahead and just delete that temporary data for us. But if you were writing data to say like a file geodatabase and you did want to clean up, you could include that as part of your task. So again, really nice. So it's all those steps pre-configured in a pro project. So our crime analyst just opens up this project once a month, runs the task. When she's done, can just close it, not save changes. I think we even have permission set on the folder so you can't edit the project. And that's been really nice because then she's able to maintain these two dashboards and we really don't have any ongoing maintenance for them. So with that, before I open up for questions, I want one more demo just to kind of show what tasks can do. I'm going to hand it over to Maggie to show a task she just very recently set up to do some mapping that here we call hot streets. So I'll let her explain what that is and show the task.
Cool. Thanks, John. Hi, everybody. I'm Maggie. I'm one of John's interns. Let me share my screen. Hopefully you all can see my pro window. But the idea behind hot streets is sort of thinking of a different way to look at point data. So we have tons of different point data sets that look something like this. This is permit data. This isn't super useful in this form. We could look at it on the neighborhood level, but that's probably too general for a lot of our applications. So we want to look at it on the street level. And the end result looks something sort of like this. So you've got like individual street segments that are hot, that have a lot of points on them, and then some with fewer, some with just a couple. But like I said, just we think a better way to look at lots of different point data. And so I set up a task for it because there's kind of a lot of geoprocessing steps involved in getting to there. That again, like John was talking about, a lot of our other GIS users maybe wouldn't know. And then if I want to repeat this workflow for other data sets too, it's just way faster to do it this way. But you don't have to know any Python to do it. Like Henry, our other intern, did this in Python, which is great, but kind of a pain to set up. And then this also lets you use the GIS tools a little bit more than Python would. So if we open my task, got a bunch of instructions for pulling in the table. So I just find it and ta-da, there's my permit table. Again, this is already preset to save to memory, just like John was talking about. And then I also have instructions for adding where clauses. If you wanted to filter your data table a little bit more, you could add a start and end date range. If you wanted to look at that, lots of other options there as well. Hit run and it just runs the geoprocessing tool. And then the next step for this specific workflow is to geocode the addresses. And John developed a particular address locator that geocodes the addresses to the nearest street segment rather than geocoding to like the center of a parcel. And that allows this whole thing to work. So again, that's all in here already. All the user would have to do is just choose the addresses field because that might be called something different depending on their specific table. This is going to geocode all my addresses for me. Let me just turn this off. So you should see them hopefully appear on the map. Ta-da! And then most of the steps after this run automatically because we wouldn't really need the user to do anything for them. So they were making a copy of the streets layer and then joining the streets layer back to our addresses. And then we'll run some more steps and I can go through these more specifically if anyone is interested. But once this one is done, there's all my steps. Ta-da, completed. We just need to choose somewhere to save our files because, again, all this is running in memory. So if we don't save the files we've created, it'll just disappear, which is not ideal. So I'm going to save that to a geodatabase in here. Maybe. Cool. And then I'm going to have it delete those intermediate data sets because you'll see this step is applying symbology, and I want to make sure that people are applying symbology to their saved copy, not to the memory copy, because that, again, will disappear when they close the project. This tool has been running kind of slowly lately, but I've got sort of two options for symbology. So this step would allow the users to apply my preset symbology layer. Super easy. But if you wanted to create your own symbology, then you could also skip this step. So I will run this. This has been going kind of slow for me lately. So apologies for that, but yeah, so you could just hit skip if you didn't want to do this. And then I'll have a one step after this that explains how to manually apply symbology. And that's just a blank step. There's no geoprocessing tools in there. It's like just instructions, which is kind of nice as well. There we go. And there you have it. There's the symbology. And then again, here's, if you skipped the apply symbology step, here's how you can bring the hot streets back into the map and get to the symbology pane. You just click finish and that's all done. Here's the layer on my map. And yeah. John, do you think I can go through the steps if we want, but it's pretty similar to
Yeah, maybe
John's
just open up the
examples.
designer so they can just kind of see again how there's a bunch of steps, there's a bunch of geoprocessing happening.
Yep.
You know, there's spatial join, there's summarize, there's join field, like
Yep. Yeah.
stuff that any like I'm guessing pretty much anybody here has done before, but it's also nice because even for people who know how to do this kind of stuff, it just does it for you. So it's also just convenient that you can
Yes.
partially automate a workflow.